Hello and welcome to another episode of Between Two Sundays. My name is Jeff Rendell. I serve as the associate pastor here at Meadowcroft Presbyterian Church. We're glad that you're joining us, and I'm joined via Zoom by our senior pastor, Max Bemfer. Max, how's it going?
It's going well. Just
Good.
finished a recording for Friday night Good Friday service, so I'm
Yeah.
at
So,
the church office presently.
so that was kind of the first time that you had to just record something. I know a lot of churches are pre-recording their services, all their services right now. We decided to do that for Good Friday so that everyone could kind of be home. But after recording, I guess a briefer message for the Good Friday service, are you glad that we're still gathering in the sanctuary on Sundays at least to record the
Yeah,
messages from there?
yeah, it's much better. I think I mentioned it last video. Even just having a few people present, but then also knowing that there are a bunch of people listening at that moment is just a big help. It's far different just staring at a screen, and even just knowing that you're being recorded, uh, and just being the only one giving a monologue is difficult. I mean, you want to just stop it every 2 seconds and then start over again because you didn't say this correctly, or that you wanted to say it differently. And yeah, it was. I'm definitely glad we're doing it the way we're doing it on Sunday mornings. That's for sure.
That's good. So I did want to ask you. So how many takes were there on the Good Friday
Uh,
message?
yeah, I deleted two. The first
Two.
two,
Okay.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I probably could have easily deleted the third one too, but I thought, no, that's it. I can't spend all night on this thing. So
Yeah, exactly. No, two's pretty good actually. I think I did a little 2 minute introduction, and that took two takes. So,
yeah,
good job by you
yeah, thanks.
there. So Sunday was my first experience preaching to that empty room, and you're right. It's definitely different. Was glad to have you there in the front row, and Eric and Donna, and we had a couple AV people there as well. But even so, it's such a different thing to preach in that way. And so that was my first experience. And of course, the microphone went out, and so I had the handheld mic as well. And I told you afterwards when I got out, my hand like felt like it would have like a claw grip around the microphone because I was squeezing it so hard just because everything was so different. And I think I was just grabbing onto that like as a means, like almost like a security blanket. You know what I mean? So
Yeah, I
uh,
know. I'm sure it was. To have that happen on top of your first time preaching in that way was just awful. I felt
yeah.
really bad for you.
Oh yeah, it happens. And I did get a notification today that it was just a wiring issue, and so the new wire arrived today. So we should be in good shape for Sunday. Our awesome AV team was all over that right away. It wasn't anything they did wrong. It was just a wire that wore out over time.
Yeah.
So one of those things, but that's okay. Um, but I wanted to talk a little bit about Sunday and get some of your thoughts, because one of the things that I talked about on Sunday was kind of that mixture of hope and lament, and that was kind of the way that I ended the sermon on that section of Luke. And I think that's something that you and I have talked about before, and we've talked about a lot, is just that rhythm of kind of hope and lament. And that's not something I think that's was unique like last Sunday that we just introduced for Palm Sunday, although I think Palm Sunday brings it to the forefront. But what are your thoughts about that? As you think about just the steady diet of church services and kind of mixing hope and lament in the Christian life? It's kind of an open-ended question, but
I mean, I think for one, I think I look at it as a Christian, number one, but then as when I'm planning services, of course, I have to look at it as a pastor and shepherd. But even as a Christian, I've encountered enough hardship in my life to know that hardship is part of a Christian's life too. And so when I go to Scripture and I see that um, people like Job experienced great hardship. And in fact, Job makes the point of emphasizing that it wasn't because of Job's sin that he experienced the hardship. Um, when you read the Psalms and see many Psalms of lament, as a percentage, they're the majority. And so you see, okay, it's not just me, but it's many of God's people who go through hardship. But also, and then so that's me as a Christian, but also as a pastor, I think it's very important, and I know you agree with this too, just to make um, you have to make decisions as a pastor. What do I think is going to really benefit God's people,
Right.
the people that He has put me as shepherd over in this church, and I don't think that what's helpful is just a nonstop stream of kind of that victorious Christian life. I think that that it is good to have a steady stream of Jesus wins, but that uh, our life as Christians is going to be oftentimes very difficult, and oftentimes difficult in a way that we can't really see the light at the end of the tunnel, or even really know what God is doing with this. I think that's really important to see that. Yeah, Job saw the end, but and he got to hear from God directly. But our word from God is that in the end, it's all going to work out, but not necessarily. We might not know why a particular hardship hits us in this life ever by the time we die, and to know that people in Scripture had that experience all the time, and that's just part of life.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, no, that I think that makes a lot of sense, and it's helpful. I think I was thinking about it, and one thing about this time that we're going through is that there's a commonality to our lament, where we're all kind of experiencing varying degrees of hardship. Some more than others, obviously, but for everybody, life's just obviously off right now
mhm.
and different. But the reality is, on any Sunday, that could be 20, 30, 40, 50, 60% of the congregation. You might have that other percentage that's just kind of cruising along, work's going well, family's going well, and things like that. But then there's always going to be people there, that are hurting and suffering, or they've sinned greatly that week and they feel incredibly guilty about it, or they're just missing somebody. Maybe it's the anniversary of somebody that they love that's passed away, and everything else about that week was fine, but they've been thinking about that person that they love. And so, I, yeah, I agree with you. I think just remembering that this is, even if it's not something that you or I or somebody else is personally experiencing that week, when you have a church family, you're always going to have that mixture, right, of people that are lamenting certain things. It's part of all of our lives, but some people are really feeling it. And I know you've read it, and I think we've talked about it before. But one of your professors, and my professors too, Carl Trueman, wrote that article like 10 years ago called "What Can Miserable Christians Sing?" Do you remember that one, or did you
Yeah,
ever?
oh yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and
that
I
was
was
that was really influential to a lot of people, I think, who just had never really heard that message before.
Yeah, and he talked about that, like, not wanting to be overly triumphalistic, because you need to. People are coming sometimes on Sunday, and they're miserable because of the things in life that are going on. And I looked up his article today, and one thing he says is, by excluding the cries of loneliness, dispossession, and desolation from its worship, the church has effectively silenced and excluded the voices of those who are themselves lonely, dispossessed, and desolate, both inside and outside the church. And in that context, he was talking about the Psalms being such a great resource for that, which you mentioned, and I mentioned the Psalms on Sunday. And one thing we do every year is and I'm really glad that we've done this, is that summer Psalms series. I think we've done it for 2 years, and if we do it this year, it'll be the third year. Just having that disciplined time in the Psalms. The Psalms are usually part of our services, but to really get into them and see those varying ranges. I think that's one of the reasons, I think, not to put words in your mouth, but that you felt like it would be good for us to kind of do that Summer Psalms series. Is that,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's like if you've ever taken those personality tests, they tell you to put the truth, not what you wish you were. And sometimes that's hard to do. You read the thing and it says, "Do I tend to work really hard or be lazy?" And it's like you want to check off the, like, I work really hard, but maybe you typically are lazy. So it's like, well, I should probably, I'm the life of the party, or I'm kind of like the person that no one talks to. Well, I mean, but what you really, and I think that's what, when you're planning a worship service, when you're thinking about what is it that this group of Christians are going through right now. You may want to believe that everyone's life is great, but that's not the reality. And so you kind of want it to be like that personality test where you say, no, I want to plan a worship service that's actually realistic, not the one that I wish we all had. If that kind of is a good analogy, maybe.
Yeah, I think that is a very good analogy, actually. Um, and there's probably a personality type that made you say it that way. So no. Oh boy. Um, well, and I think on a related note, just thinking through this week, and we talked last week about why we um, decided to take a break from John and spend a couple of weeks really kind of intentionally focusing on that Jesus's last week in Jerusalem. But I think even these next few days, we're recording this on Thursday. Tomorrow's Good Friday, and Sunday is Easter. But I wanted to ask you, your thoughts, even when we talk about that rhythm of lament and hope. What that looks like, even in terms of Good Friday and Easter. Because I'll give you like my experience, and I think I've learned this over the years. But I remember when I was a much younger Christian, it was very hard for me to understand the point of Good Friday. And I remember going to Good Friday services and just feeling like, why all this mourning? Like, we know what's going to happen in a couple of days. Like, I just can't really get into this. You know what I mean? And I think it's only in recent years just seeing that there is a rhythm to this that I think God gives us, not just in Holy Week, but throughout the year. But what it looks like for us to really kind of experience that rhythm, because I think it is something for us that's important. Maybe that's heightened now, but do you have some thoughts on that, or is that something that you have seen in your own life as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I tend to be. Thing is, I think, like, in some ways, speaking of the personality test, one of my highest scores on there was something I wasn't expecting, which was that I'm supposedly a melancholy type of person.
Hmm.
Um, and I think, you know, I am the type, and the more I thought about it, I am the kind of person, and always have been, who kind of, um, I think about my own mortality a lot. I think about the the bad thing that's going on in the world, or that type of thing. My favorite novels, I mean, I even said, like, I'm reading 1984 for like the third time. It's this dystopian novel where a guy has a rat put on his head at the end of the, it's not the most fun book, but I think that for me, it's always been kind of important for me to really take some time and meditate on the cross, because I think, I need to be reminded that the sin that I'm thinking about, or just not only my own sin, but just the sins that I see in the world, really was dealt with, and really was conquered when Jesus really did bear the wrath for sin on the cross and pay. If we skip over that, then you don't really focus. I don't think you really meditate on that part of it. And if you don't meditate on that part of it, then you don't have that moment where sin was dealt with and where it was paid for. It's like Luther's theology of the cross. He compared it to the theology of glory.
Yep.
And if you miss the theology of the cross, then you miss that point where we're brought in. Christ had glory before he ever came down here. He didn't need to come down here for him to have glory, but he had glory before the world ever existed. So if we just go to the theology of glory, that may exclude us. But I'm glad that there's a theology of the cross, because now I'm brought in as a child of God, and I think like that. So there is, there's lament involved, and there is sadness involved, but it's what happened there that's so important for us.
Yeah, no, that's a great point. And I was looking at, there's a new book called The Possibility of Prayer by a pastor up in New York named John Stark, and he was talking about fasting and feasting, and just what a important rhythm even that is, to understand that part of even the feast is the fast, beforehand. And I was thinking about, I know you're a person that enjoys a good meal, as I do as well. But I remember, you talking about going to one of those Brazilian steakhouses, and you're which I think, once a year or whatever, and you're not eating, junk throughout the day, right? Like you're kind of anticipating something, much later. In one way, I just think it's neat how everything kind of is intertwined together. Like one way that we really experience the feast is by the fast beforehand. And we really experience the joy of Easter, like you said, when we've appropriately mourned over our own sin and the sin of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it doesn't have to be like it has to be on Good Friday. It's not that. It's just that's a day that's set aside for us to specifically do that. So the fast kind of leads to the feast, which I did want to ask you. This is a weird year. Obviously, a lot of times holidays we're together with a lot of people. That's going to be, not something that we're doing this year. I know we're both going to miss that Easter breakfast when we're all together on Easter morning, which is just such one of the highlights of the year. But I did want to ask you, are you guys, we talked about it a little bit already, but you can share, what are you guys going to do on Easter to kind of enjoy a feast together as a family?
Well, first of all, it's interesting that you bring up just how different it is this year, and how sad it is that we won't be there, because I actually, when I was working on the video for Good Friday, I had a calendar notice that popped up, and I checked to see what it was. And what I had put in there for today in my Google Calendar was, make sure to add into your sermon an announcement that everyone move together and crowd together to make room for all the visitors that will be there on Sunday.
Right.
So it was very interesting that I had planned that, thinking that, of course, Easter, we may be so packed that we might not have seating. And now, because of what's happened, this unforeseen thing that at the time I could never have foreseen, we're going to barely have anyone in there. So it was just a real reminder of kind of these trials that can hit us out of nowhere, that completely alter our plans that we had set before. But so yeah, it was just a sad reminder of what we'll miss this Sunday. But our plan on Sunday is to have a little Easter egg hunt for the kids out in the backyard. And then after that, we'll have a spiral ham that we got from Costco. And I don't know, probably I think maybe Michelle is going to make like homemade mac and cheese. It won't be the most healthy meal.
It's okay.
But it'll be good. It'll taste good. How about you guys?
So yeah, I'm not a ham guy. So
Okay.
I do not like ham, unless I just don't like it. So we were actually talking to the kids today about what they wanted, and I think we're just going to grill. I think I'm going to make some burgers and hot
Okay.
dogs
Yeah.
for everybody, and I think it's supposed to be warm, so it'll kind of feel like a good day
Yeah.
to do that. But yeah, no ham for us. In fact, when we go to my parents' house for Easter, they would get a ham, and my mom would also get a little turkey breast or something for me. But she loves me, which is very sweet of her. But yeah, I don't know what it is. Those spiral hams, they just anyway. It's a whole separate topic. It's its own show.
And
But
you call yourself a Simpsons fan.
that's true. Oh, it's great. Well, one other thing I mentioned on Sunday, and I wanted to ask you about it got me thinking a little bit. And rather than I took such a beating last 2 of the last 3 weeks in trivia. I'm going to take a little break from trivia this week so I can get my ego back together a bit. But I've been thinking about sports, and especially March, because March Madness, my favorite sporting event,
Mm-hmm.
and just understanding. Obviously, it's just one of those small things, and sports are just that. Sports, as like what I said on Sunday, but but they really do, and I think even in times like this, we see how they are important in the ways that they kind of mirror our existence and bring people together. So I thought one fun thing I wanted to ask you was just, is there a sporting event or whether it's live or not that was just kind of really meaningful to you, and something that kind of played on that theme of like it tapped into something deeper just than your team winning, or something like that.
Well, I mean, yeah, there have been almost so many that it's
Just
hard to
give me
pick
one.
one. But yeah, I mean, just many great memories from sports over the years. I would say just to pick one that's a little bit maybe not as expected, but one that really stands out in my mind was the 2001 World Series,
That's a good one.
because Michelle and I, there are a number of kind of factors in this. Michelle and I had just gotten married, and it was our first year of marriage. We got married in February. This is now, you know, October of 2001. And Michelle had never been a big baseball fan. Didn't really, I mean, it wasn't like she watched it and didn't like it. She just didn't ever really watch it. And so I said, well, all right, come on. This should be a great series. Let's watch it. So she and I watched like every pitch of that World Series. We both had jobs that allowed us to, like, there's no working from home. You just, once you're home, you can relax. And we just watched every game, every pitch. I taught her kind of how to watch baseball, to pay attention to the pitch, and how he pitched him last time and how maybe he'll pitch him this time, and the relief and all of that. And then that series was amazing. It would have been good enough just to do that, and then have that time with your new bride to like watch a great World Series. But then the series is one of the best I've ever seen. I mean, Diamondbacks, Yankees. Diamondbacks, I think, won the first two. And then I think the Yankees won 3 in a row. And those games, well, some of them were blowouts, but some of them were extra innings and like 1-run difference. And then you had such amazing pitching. You had like Clemens and Mike Mussina and Andy Pettit for the Yankees, and then you had Randy Johnson and Curt Schilling for the Diamondbacks. And then for it to go to the 7th game, and bottom of the 9th, and I remember this to get to your whole point of like, you can maybe cheer, or 1 minute cheer, or the next minute you're in sorrow, or one side's cheering, the other side's crying. When Rivera came in, and the Red Sox, I mean, the Diamondbacks needed a hit, I said to Michelle, as soon as they brought Rivera in, I said, it's over. And Michelle, who's just starting to watch baseball, says, no, they're going to pull it out, because we both wanted the Diamondbacks. And I said, no, it's it. That's it. It's over. Forget it. I said, I don't even want to watch. I was so mad after Randy Johnson had come in even in relief. And then Michelle was right. And the Diamondbacks, they got a hit, and they won. And I'm telling you, I went from being really upset, not even wanting to watch, to like, I was screaming and jumping up and down and cheering, and Michelle and I are hugging each other, and it just, yeah. So neither team is my favorite team, but that series really stands out to me. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, there's same. I mean, we could do like, hours and hours on this, but I think I have to go back to the Eagles Super Bowl, not the one that they won, but when they lost to the Patriots. I think it was well, I know it was back in 2004, and I drove up to go to the NFC Championship game, and I had been to the last few NFC Championship games which they had lost, and I was living in Blacksburg, Virginia at the time, and I drove up, and there was this huge snowstorm, and I got up just in time, went to the game with three of my friends. It was awesome, and I'm driving back to Blacksburg, and my phone rings, and it's my dad, and he said, "What do you think about going to the Super Bowl?" I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he had won like the season ticket lottery for us to
Wow.
get tickets. So we had 2 tickets to the Super Bowl. We were just about on the 50-yard line. We went to the Super Bowl. And just to be able to go with my dad was really special because he started to take me. I had my first season Eagles season ticket in 1985 when I was 9 years old. And so many years of like, losing and like losing in the playoffs and terrible teams and you know, false hope and this guy's going to bring us and then that, whatever. And to go to the game. And I remember we got there like super early and we're in the stadium and it's just scattered fans throughout. And this guy, this Eagles fan was sitting like 5, 6 rows away. And he just turns around and looks at us and he goes, "Can you believe we're at the freaking Super Bowl?" He didn't say freaking, he said something else. But I was like, man, like it's so true. Like I can't believe, and like all those like human themes of like, journeying, trying to get somewhere and again, the false hopes and will it ever happen? And of course they lost the game, which in true,
Yeah, I
Philadelphia
remember watching
fashion.
that one. I was in seminary at the time.
Okay.
But I was in Philly, and there were a lot of Philly fans around me.
Yes, and
And
Catherine and I were engaged, and she was awesome. I still remember walking out of the stadium, and she called me and was like, "Hey, I'm really sorry," and I like just acted like it wasn't a big deal. I was like, "Oh, I'm fine. It's just a game, whatever." And
yeah.
poor Catherine's trying to console me, and I think when I went to bed that night, it hit me, and I was like, "Oh man." They lost the game, but even though they lost, just having that memory of being
Yeah.
there with my dad and all those things are more important than wins and losses anyway, obviously. And Paul McCartney did the halftime show, which was great. So I got
Oh
to see
man, I
Paul.
forgot about that. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah. So that was an added bonus. I never thought I'd get to see him live.
yeah,
So that
yeah,
was.
really.
I always tell people I was in a show
What
with
an
Paul McCartney.
opportunity. Yeah, that's great.
So
Yeah.
anyway,
It's interesting that both of our memories really kind of center around being with a particular person,
yeah,
and not just the game we watched or the series we watched, but you with your dad and me with Michelle.
yeah.
It's neat.
Yeah, it is. It's funny, and not to go on, but this past week was the anniversary of Syracuse winning their one national championship in basketball, and that happened the year before I met Catherine. And by the next year, we were dating, and I always say, "Man, I missed it by one year." Getting to share that with you because it would be even more
Yeah,
fun to look
yeah,
back on that. But that's okay.
yeah.
She doesn't seem as upset about it as I am. So, um,
Yeah, probably not.
no. Despite the fact that we will be apart this Sunday, we are going on with our Easter service. So I just wanted to spend a few minutes talking about Sunday. I got the order of worship from you, and it looks really good. But I wanted to ask you, our call to worship is Psalm 121, and that's a famous psalm. It's the one that begins with, "I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth." And I was legitimately curious what made you pick that one. What was your thinking there to kind of on with
Yeah,
us
I
today?
mean, I think I was trying to find a call to worship that once again is it's not directly. I could pick other things that would have maybe directly pointed to the idea of resurrection or something like that. But Psalm 121, I was reading a book. It's a really great book. It's by a Old Testament scholar, Alex Motyer, I think it's called Psalms by the Day or something. And Psalm 121, which is pretty famous, a lot of people know that psalm. But he said, really, ultimately, what it's about is security. That the main theme is security, and he says that he breaks it down. He outlines them too, and he says, if you look at what it says here, I've got the book here in front of me. He says, Yahweh, there's a question that comes up. I keep raising my eyes to the mountains, and from where will my help come from? That's the question that the psalmist asks. And it's a question that any of us can ask as I look around, like where's my help going to come in this time? And he says, look, the answer is given in three ways here. One is my help comes from Yahweh, the Creator, Yahweh, the God of Israel, the Redeemer. So it's God the Creator, God the Redeemer, and then Yahweh, your companion and protection. So the psalm lays this threefold way of looking at God, that God is the Creator, He's also your Redeemer, but then after redeeming you, He walks with you through this life. And guide you and so there is that theme of resurrection one day, that one day I will be with him. He'll guide me through this life, but it also gives us this idea of comprehensive preservation right now, which I think is just important for us to consider, again, as we're just in this time. And I think not being there on Easter is just going to be another reminder of the hardship we're in right now.
Yeah, that's a great point. I preached on Psalm 121, I think a while ago, but I remember studying it, and even that last verse, the Lord will keep your going out and your coming in. And the psalmists, they do this a lot, but that phrase right there is exactly what you're talking about. It's not actually just when you leave and you come back, but it's there's a comprehensive nature, like you said, like He's always with us. His presence is always there. So. Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a great psalm, and then we move from there into some songs. I don't want to go through each one, but I did want to ask you. They're all great songs, but is there one in particular that you kind of especially enjoy singing on Easter?
Yeah, probably for me, it's that song. I think it's just called Resurrection Hymn, but it's also entitled See What a Morning.
Yeah.
That song, I think, there's something about that song. There's just something about, I think, the music coupled with the words. I love the section about See Mary weeping.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives you that picture from John's gospel. John's the only one that mentions it, how Mary Magdalene is crying by the tomb, and then Jesus calls her. He says Mary, and then she knows who it is. She doesn't recognize him at first, and that song just speaks to that moment. She hears a voice speaking her name. It's the Lord raised to life again. And
Yeah.
this it's just and the music that accompanies it is just so kind of joyful and upbeat and just that. But I mean, there are so many good ones. I think that's one that, because I don't think we ever sing. Well, a lot of them we don't sing except on Easter Sunday. But that one in particular, I never would sing it unless it was Easter. And
Right.
so it's another thing just to look forward to. Like, great, I get to sing the song again.
Yeah.
For
It's a
once a
special
year.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. No,
So
it's
that
good.
probably that one for me. Is there one out of the ones that I picked that you particularly? Although I really love the new Hymn of the Month. I'm going to look forward
Yeah.
to singing that again too.
Yeah, I thought that was very easy to sing, on
Yeah.
Sunday, even though it was, Eric, definitely carrying the two of us, with
Oh yeah.
so, but it all worked out. But yeah, that was a great one. I think for me, it's Christ is risen from the dead,
Yeah.
which is another, I guess, somewhat newer one, but
Yep.
I really like that song. In fact, when I was ordained, there were only two songs in my ordination service, and that was one of them.
I remember that. Yeah.
Even though my ordination service was in December, I was like, I don't care,
Yeah.
we're doing this one. I just love that song because there's so many great scriptural themes in it. You know, the theme of death losing its sting. I love the way that song just mocks death and mocks hell.
Yeah,
Is a really our unity with Christ. You know, we're one with Him again, and then even just the different aspects of Jesus's atonement. You know, being our substitute. You know, standing in our place, bearing the weight of our sin. I think the song says, beneath the weight of all our sin, but also just his victory as well,
yeah.
and bringing all those themes kind of together. Uh, I really enjoy that song a lot. So yeah,
Oh yeah,
that'll be the one I'll be belting them all out, but I'll be belting that
yeah.
one out probably the most on Sunday.
Yeah,
So
that's I remember the first time I heard that song, and I immediately added it to. I was doing a men's retreat, and we I immediately added it to the repertoire at the men's retreat. And my best friend, who's also a pastor, he was the guy speaking at the men's retreat. And when he heard that song, he came up to me after the time of singing and after he spoke, and he said, "What song is that? Because I want to bring that back to my church." So yeah, that's just such a great song too, and I love it. It's one of those songs that that we sing kind of throughout the year, though.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Not that makes it any less great, but yeah, I think Christ is risen. We sing that kind of, yeah. That's more of a sing that anytime song, you know.
Right. Oh, I'll sing that any day
Oh
of the
yeah,
week. Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
definitely.
I wanted to briefly read your passage for Sunday, and just it's a passage a lot of us are familiar with, but I just wanted to read it and ask you if there were maybe anything, and maybe the answer is no, but if anything kind of new stood out or anything that was a particular emphasis to you, this time as you went through it. So the passage this Sunday is Luke 24, 1-12. Um, and it says, "But on the first day of the week, at early dawn, they went to the tomb, taking the spices they had prepared, and they found the stone rolled away from the tomb. But when they went in, they did not find the body of the Lord Jesus. While they were perplexed about this, behold, two men stood by them in dazzling apparel. And as they were frightened and bowed their faces to the ground, the men said to them, 'Why do you seek the living among the dead? He is not here, but is risen. Remember how he told you while he was still in Galilee that the Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men and be crucified, and on the third day rise.' And they remembered his words, and returning from the tomb, they told all these things to the 11 and to all the rest. Now it was Mary Magdalene and Joanna and Mary, the mother of James, and the other women with them who told these things to the apostles. But these words seemed to them an idle tale, and they did not believe them. But Peter rose and ran to the tomb. Stooping and looking in, he saw the linen cloths by themselves, and he went home marveling at what had happened."
Yeah, it's interesting, and you know this, Jeff, but I went into study this, and at first just thought, well, this is a familiar passage. I've heard it a million times, read it a million times. Everybody has. There's really not much else to say, but you start digging in, and things stand out to you that maybe didn't really stand out to you before so much. And there are a number of things in this, but just one of the things I'll mention is just how kind of I guess maybe the best way to put it is just how much I admire and respect these women disciples that Jesus had, because they were the ones that were there while he was crucified. We know John was there too, but while all of his male disciples ran for the
Mm,
hills, the women stood by and actually watched him die. And I think so
mm,
often scholars point out that women's testimony, and I'll probably mention this on Sunday, that women's testimony back then was not really considered valid. It wasn't used in court and all of that. And you see that the apostles didn't believe them either when they came and told them. But I think it's so key that they were the ones to go and witness the empty tomb first, because they were also the ones to see Jesus die. and they were also the ones actually to see him laid in the tomb. Like they saw every aspect of this. And so for them to come back and to be the first to see the empty tomb, their witness is actually stronger uh,
Mm.
than anyone else could have been, because the other people that if it had been the 11 men that didn't stand, well, John, but the other guys that didn't stick around, if they had
Right.
gone, well, maybe Jesus didn't die. I mean, maybe he somehow
Yeah.
escaped or whatever. But these women actually saw the death too. And the fact that they stuck by and then went, they were going there not to rejoice in his resurrection, but to honor him one
Yeah.
last time
Yeah.
and to pay him respect by giving him a proper burial and covering him with the spices and all of that.
Mm.
And I just think it's also neat just how sort of how the Lord honored them first.
Mm.
Mary was the first to see Jesus resurrected. I just think that's so special, like he went and saw the others later, but he saw her first. And
Yeah.
yeah, I just that was one of the things that among many that just stood out to me this time.
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, man. I wanted to ask you, do you ever feel pressure, preaching on Easter with it being such like kind of a big Sunday?
Yeah. I think the pressure I feel is somewhat related to pressure I probably feel every Sunday, which is just um, you want to sort of try to say something new, but a lot of times on Sundays, because the passage isn't so well known, you kind of can, it's like, well, how many people have read this passage? So even if I just explain what's going on here, it's going to be new to a lot of people. But on Easter, it's kind of like, what else can I say that hasn't been said? And I have to just sometimes reconcile with, what, it doesn't matter if I don't say anything new. This is a great old story that needs to be told. So
Yeah,
I,
that's
I
fair.
think I think it's more it's pressure that I put on myself than that anyone else puts on me. But that's definitely something I feel.
Yeah, no, we absolutely do not have a church that like turns the screws on us to have something,
Yeah.
crazy new or anything like that. Well, I wanted to actually, I read this today. It's by Abby Perry, she wrote this column in Christianity Today, just about being a pastor and even preaching on Sunday in the midst of everything that's going on. And I thought of you, and I thought it might encourage you. So I just want to read this and then pray for you to close our time, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Um, and she's talking about what it looks like to bring hope to people, kind of in the lungs of what we're talking about, without dismissing the reality of lament during this time. And she says it may look quite simple, really, as we struggle to dedicate our attention due to a deluge of daily information, brains scattered by collective loss and trauma, or our children running around in circles. Flashy entertainment and trite platitudes can't possibly provide what our hearts crave this year. A pastor opening the text of the resurrection story, which only makes sense in light of the horror and sacrifice of the crucifixion, to tell us that not only do we have hope now because Jesus rose again, but we have hope for the future when we too will rise with Christ. Tears come to my eyes just imagining the look on so many preachers' faces this Sunday as they gaze earnestly into a device and remind their congregants and digital visitors that even in this we can take heart, for Jesus Christ has overcome the world. And she says, Pastors, I'm pulling for you this Sunday. Bring us your heart and your hope. We don't need glitz or glamour. We don't need to be distracted from our sadness. We need to know that you're here for us as shepherds and friends. Tell us why you're hopeful. Tell us why you're sad. Tell us what the crucifixion and resurrection say about it all. As we look forward to seeing you again in person again, dear leaders, remind us of the day we'll see Jesus face to face as well.
Yeah, that was great. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, man.
that is a big encouragement. I appreciate that.
Good. Yeah, I read it and just thought, man, like that's exactly I think what we both need to hear, but especially for you preaching on Sunday. So why don't I pray for us to close out our time?
Great.
Uh,
Thank you.
Lord, thank you for this time, and just so encouraging to be able to talk to Max and hear how he's doing this week. And we do just pray for him. Pray you would protect him from any sort of self-imposed pressure this week to bring some new and exciting thing to us. Just help him to remind us of the great hope of the resurrection. And we thank you especially for Jesus, Lord. And we know members of our congregation are hurting in many different ways, some related to this virus, some in many other ways. And Lord, I pray that this weekend we would see the reality of our own sin and the weight of our sin that sent Jesus to the cross, but that he went there in love, and also that death was not the final word. And pray that even as we experience the rhythm of Good Friday, we would look forward to Sunday and a time to rejoice that the tomb is indeed empty, and to look forward to our own resurrection someday. And Lord, I just, again, pray for Max, pray for this whole congregation, and we just thank you for the privilege of knowing you and your great love for us. Pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
My brother, always good to see you. And
Definitely.
Lord willing, I'll see you Sunday. Everybody else, we miss you and love you, and we'll talk to you soon.
Absolutely. Goodbye.